because it has to go out to the cloud to do things.
Yeah, no, what I found. Oh well, hold on. Welcome everybody, another edition to Learn Photography with Duck. I am your rattled instructor for tonight's lesson. This is episode 19 of season 7. Okay, there we go. Got that out of the way. Yeah, so let's go to chat. So I was saying that I've noticed lately my Lightroom has gone relatively slow. And I find that Lightroom tends to do this periodically. Now, obviously, Lightroom, many years ago changed from a buy once, own that for a while until they do a major upgrade. Then you got to pay for the upgrade. They changed from that model to the subscription model, which has its pros and cons. Love it or hate it, whatever you want. Personally, I kind of like the subscription model because it's based on what I used to pay in the past for Adobe products. For me, it was a no-brainer. It was relatively cheaper to buy into the subscription. And I also like the fact that, they're constantly doing updates, constantly adding features, constantly, adding cameras as new cameras come out. They rebuild the database to accept all the latest and greatest cameras. And of course, all this AI that they've been putting into Lightroom. And what I noticed, like in the past, is that Lightroom would start getting very, very bloated because of all the features that they would put into it. And things would run slow. And then once it kind of settled onto what it was they wanted to put into, as far as features, they would then go in, do whatever they had to do to like trim the fat, I guess you can call it. And, just tweak it, get rid of the bugs, make it a little bit faster. And then, Lightroom would run really, really well until the next round of improvements. And, Mark's a software developer, so he probably understands this a lot better than us. And some of you who've done any kind of software development, that the first iteration of code is a little sloppy. It's like anything, the first of anything is a rough cut. And it's not until you go in and you play around with it and you refine it and you streamline it and you make it all pretty that, it runs good. And that's what I find with Lightroom is that periodically, they put all this effort into getting these new features and things start slowing down. And with everything that they've been doing with AI, and like Bill mentioned, a lot of the time, some of these features, what they're doing is they're sending up into the cloud to the Adobe servers to do part of the work, and then return it back to your system over the internet, and that slows things down. But that's a different kind of slow. That's a like, okay, I'm waiting for them to do something. Then there's also the slow of like, well, this should load up a little bit faster. This should switch from this screen to this screen a little bit faster, but it's not. All right. And that's because it's taxing the service on your local machine.
I have not had that problem with Lightroom since I bought my super computer and I showed you. I showed you the specs of it. I have not had that problem, but I don't do as much editing that you do. I don't have paid clients, so
Yeah, yeah.
that could be it. The other thing is, it's typical of software development where you have some releases have certain bugs in. Like if you notice, anytime you download a new
Yep.
version of something, say, hey, here are the improvements, fix bugs.
Yes,
And
yes.
notice just with just we've all used Windows. It seems like every other version of Windows is good and every other version is bad. Think of it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Well, it's got to be uh mind-boggling complex to keep track of, especially, a program like Windows, that it's got to work seamlessly with all kinds of software made by who knows who. And
Specialized and specialized software, like case in point, the big
yeah,
company will not go with a new version of Windows right away because they have so many vendors and they have so many in-house stuff.
yeah.
You have to bang it out and make sure it works. So companies are very slow to upgrade to a new operating system.
Well, there's a certain amount of risk involved with
Yes.
that. And understandably, big companies can't afford to be shut down because of some software inconsistency. But just keeping track of, just think of the hundreds of thousands of different monitors that are available, and the system has to be able to read all those and recognize them. Granted, there are standards, but even with standards, we're all over the place. So I give developers a lot of credit for what they got to do.
You,
So anyway, so hopefully my machine's not going to be too slow today. Last week I said that I wanted to go over some of the some masking features, um, especially with Photoshop Camera Raw, something that they put in, which I believe is also going to be, it's in the pipelines to be coming into Lightroom Classic. It seems that, well, if you understand Adobe and their system, you know that with your subscription, you have access to a beta version of both Lightroom and Photoshop. And if you're brave enough to want to see what's coming down the pipeline, what these developers are working with, you can load up your the beta version of Lightroom and the beta version of Photoshop, and they're going to run independently of each other. So it's not like if you have Lightroom Classic installed on your machine and you say, you know what, I want to try, the Lightroom Classic beta, and you decide to install it. It's not going to overwrite Lightroom Classic and say, okay, you can't use that anymore. You just got to use the beta. No, they run simultaneously side by side, independent of each other. All right. You just got to understand there's a caveat to working with the beta version. There's going to be bugs in it, okay? But in a way, I think it's kind of smart for them to do this, because then it turns their subscribers into guinea pigs, beta testers, okay? Who many of them knowingly participate in the beta test of the software and say, hey, okay, part of my agreement of using the beta program is that one, it's going to be prone to mishaps, but two, all right, there's a certain responsibility of me responding back to Adobe and say, hey, look, this is what I found when I was using this feature, and you can report back to Adobe so that the Adobe team can take a look at all this and say, okay, well, you know, here's a collection of errors that, you know, if we analyze it, it seems to be concentrated on such and such, you know, let's go in and take a look at it. So, you know, in my opinion, I think it's a smart idea. You just have to be willing to put up with the frustrations of using beta software. And if you've been on YouTube following any of the YouTube creators, you know, many of them happily jump into the beta software. That way they can see what's coming up and they let you know, hey, you know, this is coming down the pipeline. And that's how I get my information. Me personally, I don't want to load beta software into my machine. I have enough problems with this as it is, you know. And to tell you honestly, you know, because I use this software for work as well as, you know, to teach, I don't want to just willy-nilly mess it up. I just have one machine. If I had a separate machine that I did, you know, my Zoom meetings on, and that was independent, that'd be a different thing. But this machine is dual purpose, so I kind of avoid that. But anyway. So the nice thing is that, like I said, it usually comes out in beta, okay? But what I find is that from beta, sometimes it'll jump into Lightroom before it jumps into Adobe Camera Raw. But lately I've noticed that it's been jumping from beta to Adobe Camera Raw first before being released in the regular version of Adobe Lightroom. You know, so I don't know what their mentality is, what the train of thought is, what the reasoning is. You know, who knows? Obviously, there's got to be a reason for it. But what I do know is that Adobe Camera Raw and Adobe Camera Raw is a raw processor. Okay, that's all it is. It takes your raw images and converts it from that ones and zeros to something that can be displayed and edited on your machine. Likewise, Lightroom and Lightroom Classic are raw editors. Okay, the same as Adobe Camera Raw. But the only thing is they added some more bells and whistles to Lightroom, you know, with the print module and the map module and the book module, you know, which obviously is not available in Adobe Camera Raw. But the basic function of taking a raw image, converting it, and letting you edit straight onto that raw image before it gets opened up in Photoshop, that's what a raw editor does. And that's what Lightroom does. Okay? So anyway, what I wanted to do is I wanted to show you some of the things that are coming down the pipeline. And I don't know if you guys do any kind of sky replacement or even object selection, you know, but you'll see what I mean. So anyway, without further ado, let's get into the lesson. All right, make sure my scene switcher is working. Yay! And also my little, yes. These little things here, my little window pop-outs here. So that way, you know, I'm not like hiding unneeded stuff. They got all screwed up. I had to go fix those too. So we're back in order. All right. What I did is I selected let's go into the, just kind of like a few images. I think I edited this one live with you guys, like last year. I think I did this. All right, where we took a, let's see, this is the, oops. Let's go to the develop module. This is the before, and that's the after. All right, and all of this was edited in Lightroom. This edit was done in Lightroom. Okay, and like I said, I think I did this with you guys. I'm not 100% sure, but anyways, whenever you do anything with local edits in editing your image, local edits utilize masks. Okay, you cannot do a local edit without a mask. All right. So one of the things that that's built into Lightroom is that if we go, let me launch my, let's see. Okay, here we go. If we go into our mask module, okay, we have, it used to be, you know, the only thing we had available were the brush, the linear gradient, the radial gradient, all right? These were, you know, kind of like the common ones that were available to us, all right? And then they decided to expand it, and we got some other ones, and the latest ones were the AI ones with the landscape and the sky and the background. All right, but the sky is kind of like a little bit of the OG. That was the first one that they decided to bring out. Okay, now usually I have when I work with masks, I need some way of identifying the fact that I'm using a mask, but still being able to view the image. Okay, so if you notice right here in the mask pop out here, there's this show overlay. All right, and if you toggle that on and off, you notice that my sky goes from white to red. Okay, and the reason being is that I've applied this as a color overlay. Okay, a color overlay onto my image. All right, and if you click on the color square, it allows you to pick whatever color. I think by default it's this kind of pinky red color. That is a hang-on from the old days of manually stripping negatives for print. We used to use this red transparent film called Ruby Lith. And what we would do is we would lay it over whatever we needed to mask on you know, our layout, and with an X-Acto knife we would cut the red part of the mask, which is just a thin, you know, transparent layer of vinyl plastic. Okay, we would cut it, and then we would peel it away, revealing a clear carrier sheet. Okay, and of course we're able to look through the carrier sheet, you know, to the underlying thing. That's the way we made masks back in the day. Okay, and because red photographed as black when we made our litho prints, you know, whatever was red would be converted to black and obviously wouldn't print. Okay. So I kind of am used to that. But the thing is, sometimes if your image has a lot of red in it, you want to utilize something that is different. Okay, why is my thing not going? Okay, so you can change the color if you want. Uh-oh. I lost the tip to my stylus. Oh no. That's why it's not working.
Oh, we're starting early this week.
You know, it's my stylus. Oh, here, hold on. Let me change. My tablet, my stylus, the little tip. Actually, you can see my tip's missing. Here I am. I'm writing on here, and it's not. Give me 1 second. Oh, found it. I got lucky. You know, look at this. Look at this thing. That tiny little thing. I got lucky, guys. All right. Let me pop this back in. Make sure I don't go waving the pen around and cause havoc again. You know, it's that day. It's that kind of day. All right, let's go back. All right, here we go. Hey, we got it. Oh, okay. So if your image has a lot of one color, what I normally do is I'll go and use like the complete opposite of the color wheel. Okay. So if you're working on a sky, come on. If you're working on a sky and your sky is blue, obviously you don't want to use a blue mask because then you're not going to be able to know what's mask and what's the actual sky. So, you know, maybe find something that's garishly green, or, you know, maybe something that's garishly yellow. All right. Of course, that's not going to work if you're trying to create a sunset shot. Okay. So find something that is typically, you know, the opposite. I find that this, you know, bright magenta pink color, you usually don't find it in nature all that often. So I tend to kind of keep it in that realm. All right. So you can see that the AI did a fairly decent job of selecting the sky. Okay. Oh, and the other thing is, if you don't want a color overlay, you do have options for other more conventional ones, like the image on a black and white here. Let's go through these. All right. So we have the color overlay on a black and white image. Not too crazy about that. The image on black and white. Okay, not too crazy about that. You can see it's kind of hard to tell where the mask is. All right. This one, image on black, again, you know, that's the image. The sky is the image on black. All right. You can see how everything else was turned black. But because my sky is white to begin with, you know, it's kind of hard to figure out. Obviously, this looks more like a traditional Photoshop mask, you know, which we also have available. All right. And of course, we can do it the image on white if you don't like the black. Okay. In my opinion, that's even worse. Or you can do the traditional, what you would find in Photoshop, which kind of looks like the image on black, but you can see there's a little bit of texture here. You can see a little bit of texture in the sky. That's because we're looking at the actual picture here. Whereas with the white on black, it's substituting white for where the mask is and black for where the mask is not. Okay. Now, 99% of the time, I'll use the color overlay because it serves its purpose. But there are times where you need to double check yourself. And what I'll sometimes do is I'll pop into this one here, which is the white on black, which is the traditional Photoshop style, just to double check and see what the quality of my mask is. And then I'll go back to the color overlay and do, whatever adjustments I need to do. Okay. So that's a quick intro to how Lightroom handles the masks. Okay. So I've applied a mask. I've told it to select the sky. And on first view, it kind of looks like it did a really, really good job. All right. Now, the problem that we tend to have with any mask, doesn't matter if it's a sky mask or a subject mask or even one that you build, the biggest problem is the edges of the mask. Okay. And one of the biggest issues that since day one has been with Lightroom is because these are auto-generated, for the most part, we can't really fine-tune it, okay? For the most part. Okay, we do have the ability to go in with like a brush tool, but even the brush tool here, like for example, if I do select brush, it's like using a hammer to do, fine needlepoint work. The tool really isn't the best for manipulating masks within Lightroom. Okay. There are ways around it, and we'll cover that in a little bit. But for the most part, here's the sky mask that it gave us. All right, and just to show you the quality of the edge, and what I mean is, I'm going to push the exposure probably a lot more than I would suggest that you do. All right. But I'm doing this just to show you what it does to the edge. Okay. And I want you to pay attention to a couple of areas. So one here, let me undo that. Let's go to red. All right. One is along here. The other one is right along her face. And then the other one is probably more critical, is in this area of the trees. Okay. Pay attention to those. Okay. I'm going to drop down the exposure. All right. And you notice that, let me go ahead and zoom in here. Okay. We get this, what's called haloing. All right. And in this case, the halo is a, for lack of better terms, a positive halo, meaning the mask is encroaching onto, from the sky onto the land, up into the trees. Okay. So we have a mask that is going and expanding into our background, or whatever you want to call it. All right, so we have the sky. All right, it should be following along the tree line and everything. All right, but because the tree line is so sporadic, and convoluted and textured, all right, it has a hard time building a edge for edge mask, right? That's always been the case with Lightroom since day one. It's always been the case with Photoshop. You know, even when you decide to make your own mask, sometimes we tend to be a little bit less careful with the way we make our mask, and we get this kind of like negative or this this positive edge here, right? So it looks darker. Okay, so that's issue number one. All right, now if we go up here onto the subject's face, you can see where there is a very definitive hard edge. It does a beautiful job maintaining that mask edge. But as soon as we start getting into any kind of fine detail or texture, we start losing it. And you can see, let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. All right, you can see how degraded that mask edge is. Okay. And again, like I said, I'm kind of pushing it here just to illustrate the fact. All right. Normally you won't push it like this, you know, and things like, you know, on the face or in this background stuff. But when it comes to trees, it's always been an issue. All right. And you can see how it does. It has a hard time figuring out, well, what's tree leaves, what are tree branches, and what is sky. Okay. So if we bring this back up, okay. And the reason being is part of it has to do with how light is recorded on our sensor when it comes to working around edges. Okay. Any substrate that has a certain amount of transparency is going to allow some of that light from coming in from the back to transmit through, okay, and make those thin areas light. And of course, that's all that leaves are, is very translucent pieces of green that just allows all this light to kind of come through in a lesser, you know, a lesser strength than full bright sunlight. Okay, so you get this gradation, and of course there are layers between you and the back of the tree. You have tree leaves in the front, you have tree leaves behind those, you have tree leaves that form a denser cluster within the intersections, and you have leaves on the other side of the tree that are further away, that not only do they transmit light through them, but they're also being affected by our aperture and causing them to blur. And that blur softens the edges, and we no longer have a hard edge to deal with. Okay, so what happens is when we are trying to make a mask, either when we're trying to build a mask on our own or we're utilizing AI to make a mask, it's looking for the closest hard, distinct edge to build that mask on. Okay. So now if we look at our tree, we can see that, you know, we can kind of follow this, and we can say, well, you know, the color is very dense in these areas, and then it gets very, very light. And then there's these little tendrils that kind of stick out. All right. So if I were to be making a mask manually, it would look something like this, right? Hopefully you guys can see. Can you guys see that okay? All right. Maybe I should use a different color. Yeah, here we go. All right.
We can see it there.
Okay, good, good, good. All right. So if you're following it along, you know, that's the hard edge. Okay. But that's the hard edge at this exposure, at the exposure you took it at. But what we're looking to do is we're trying to take this background and we're going to drop that light value and make it darker. Okay. While the stuff that's inside the mask is not going to change in value at all. Okay, so that means anything along that edge that is soft, all right, does have some information that is carried by what's inside it. Okay, so that when we start dropping the exposure, and you'll see it here in a second, as we start dropping the exposure, you're going to see that that edge kind of works outward, okay? Because the parts that were very light are now getting darker, okay? So now we're noticing that instead of our edge being here, we now have an edge that is actually out here, okay? You can see that, right? You see that the difference between that inner edge that we had before to the outer edge that is now visible because we've dropped the exposure. So that creates a big, big headache when you're making any kind of mask. Okay. And that's something you need to be aware of, is how the information around the edges of your mask are going to be affected as you make your changes. Does that make sense to you guys, how I explained it? I don't want you guys getting lost because this is heavy duty stuff. We're getting into some like serious stuff. All right. I made this for you advanced editors. Okay. Mark, I'm looking at you.
Good. I'm following.
All right. Okay. And so, you know, in the past, you know, we've had issues with like hair. How do you mask hair? Because what ended up happening is any of the flyaways kind of tended to get frizzy looking and kind of crunchy, you know, technical term. All right. Because parts of the strand would disappear and it would leave these little pieces just kind of floating in midair, you know. So making a good mask has always been a problem. All right. So in Photoshop, we have ways of correcting it, but in Lightroom, we never did. Okay. So let me go ahead and zoom out. Come on. There we go. All right. So what are some of the things that are available to us? Well, when it comes to edges, all right, you know, you can see up here is one of the things we could do is we can come in with a brush, okay, and typically when we select a brush, we have all of these. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry, guys. I just realized I am not sharing my screen. So you're probably not seeing all the little detail. Give me 1 second. My apologies. That's my bad. Where's my share? Where is it? Oops, wrong one. Share. Uh, where is it? Oh, there it is. Okay, share. There we go. Oops, wrong screen. Come on. Where's Lightroom? There we go. Okay. All right. Hopefully that's better. Okay. So like down in this area here, it's not that bad. All right. We can kind of, do something to clean it up. Okay. But this area here, that looks atrocious. All right. And that would probably put a locked door between, somebody who's not confident in their mask building to be able to take it to the next level. All right. So one of the things we're able to do is we can take and use our pen, or a pen tool, okay, which gives us some features that are not available in just like the sky mask. Okay, we can alter the size, we can alter the feather, the flow, and the density. All right, we even have this new feature that it's not new anymore, but newer, the auto mask, which kind of does a bit of an edge detect and says, okay, I'm going to keep it to this side of the edge and not cross over to that side, which is a nice little feature. Okay, but the feature that we really can use is this feather. Okay, so what we can do is we can take the edge of our pen tool, all right, and you notice that there's two circles. The inner circle is the nib. All right, well, actually, the nib starts at that little plus symbol right in the middle, the reticle, and it goes from 100% to approximately 50% to that middle circle, and then from 50% to nothing on the outer circle. And of course, we can use the feather, and it kind of chokes up the softness of our edge until we have like a really hard edge. All right. And just to show you what I mean, let's see, we'll do a exposure shift here. All right, so that's a soft edge, okay, with 100% feather, and this is a hard edge with 0% feather. So this is a tool that's available to us to kind of modify the sky mask. All right, and of course, we have the ability to either add or subtract to the mask. And then just recently, if you press or hold the Alt or the Option key, the ability to intersect a mask. Okay. Oops, wrong one. Okay. So now we can go ahead and add a brush. I can come in and I can give it a lot of feather. All right, maybe make it a little bit big, bring my flow down, and just kind of add to this section here. And you notice that I'm kind of starting to bring back, some of these trees. Okay. Okay. Because what I'm doing is I am telling Lightroom, all right, so before, all right, so this is our mask, just so you guys, oops, here, let me turn it on. There we go. You can see here, what I'm doing is I'm telling Lightroom, okay, instead of just going up to that edge, I want you to really, come into that area, and all these little spots of sky, all right, what we're doing is we're lowering the exposure, okay? So we're saying by painting on those spots, we're going to add it to this mask here, which is going to lower our exposure, okay? But it's also going to lower the exposure of the tree, okay? So now remember what we said earlier about those edges, okay? That, and let me turn off the brush. Oops. And let me go ahead and zoom in here. Come on. Okay. What we're doing is we're telling Lightroom as we add the brush that we're going to not only darken the areas out here, but we're also going to darken the areas inside the leaves, which was omitted by the original mask. So what we're doing is we're evening out, we're balancing. Okay, we got a nice balance here between the sky, all right, and our leaves. All right, misspelled it, but you get it. Okay. So that's what we're doing is we're basically, you can say we're camouflaging the edge. All right. We're making it a little bit more obscure so that you don't really notice that that transition. Okay. But it makes the entire that part of the tree darker, which isn't that bad. It's not that bad considering it kind of looks natural. All right. And we can do the same thing here. Okay. Because if we have a dark sky, we're probably going to have a bit of a dark land underneath that sky. All right. So we can use the mask to soften those edges. Okay. And as we go down, we just do a little bit less and less. All right. Oh, for the overlay. All right. We just kind of, as we bring it in, we fade it off into nothing. All right. So we give it a gradual transition. So that's one way of being able to control your edges with these clumsy tools. Okay. Everybody follow that? All right. So in essence, what I did is I took that hard edge along those leaves and I made it soft. Okay. All right. Let me go ahead and I'm just going to delete that mask. We don't need it. All right. I'm going to open this up in Adobe Camera Raw. Okay. So we're going to go edit in and I'm going to open. All right. Now, I understand some of you do not use Lightroom as much. You kind of go straight from your raw photo right into Photoshop, and then Photoshop will open the raw image into Camera Raw. Okay. As you guys know, my preference is to open up the raw file in Lightroom first, so I can do my pre-edits, my normalization, you know, my raw editing in Lightroom before I export it to Photoshop. So I want to do as much as possible in the raw editor before bringing it into Photoshop. There are benefits to it. You know, if you want to know what those benefits are, ask me later. That's for another lesson. Okay. So typically going from Lightroom into Photoshop, you bypass Camera Raw. You don't need Camera Raw because Lightroom is your Camera Raw processor, okay? But if you want to go from Lightroom to Camera Raw to Photoshop, there is a way of doing it. It's a little bit of a step. Instead of opening it in, all right, here we go. Edit in, instead of edit in Adobe Photoshop, what you want to do is you want to say open it as a smart object in Photoshop. Okay. All right. And that's going to, where's my Photoshop? All right. It's going to launch it. Come on. Into, oops. Oh, no, I wasn't. Okay. Sorry. It's going to open it in Photoshop, but the one thing you're going to notice is that there's this little icon in the corner of your image, okay? That lets you know that it's a smart object, okay? So now all we got to do is just double click on that little icon and it opens it back up into Camera Raw, okay? I'm going to cancel that for a second. Oops, let's see. No. If you, oh, can't, hold on, cancel. Why is it opening up over there? Yes. If you forget and you open up just the normal way, okay? Not to get into too much into the weeds, but you have to understand that from Lightroom into Photoshop, it's going to convert it from Camera Raw to a TIFF format, okay, that you can edit, all right? In this case, what it's doing is it's preserving the Camera Raw, all right, as a separate sub file, okay? You have access to the actual Camera Raw file, all right? You're editing the TIFF, but you have access to that raw file, okay? If you just go from Lightroom to Photoshop, it opens it up as a TIFF. You do not have access to that underlying raw file, all right? So you can go to filter, Camera Raw filter, but you just got to realize that it's taking the TIFF file and opening the TIFF file in that raw processor. Okay, that's the biggest difference. Okay, most of the time, are you going to notice any difference? Probably not. Okay, but as you advance and your editing gets very technical and very nuanced, that can play a big, important role. So keep that in the back of your mind. All right. All right. So we're going to double click, open it up in Adobe Camera Raw. And you'll notice that we're basically in Lightroom, not Lightroom Classic, but Lightroom. Okay. Lightroom and Adobe Camera Raw, you know, share the same skeleton. Okay. The layout's a little bit different here. You're going to notice that off on the sides, where in, actually, let me toggle over. Where in Lightroom Classic, we have the icons here underneath the histogram, you know, prominently displayed. Okay. In Adobe Camera Raw, they kind of just said, hey, you know, we're going to squeeze them all the way into this upper corner. All right. So they're all right here. Okay. And the icon's still the same. You have your mask. Okay. Now, let me go back over here. I'm going to go to the mask. If I click on the sky option, the sky mask option, Bam, it gives me the mask. It does everything for me. And if you'll notice, I have no controls here. None. Zip zilch 0. Okay? Nothing. Right? This is probably the biggest change, and this is supposedly coming down to the line. All right. If I click on the sky mask, it's going to, again, here, let me do my color overlay. There we go. Yep. Okay. Now I have my sky mask. All right. You're going to notice something different. We now have a couple of sliders that we can use for our to manipulate our mask. Okay. Now the first thing you're going to notice, all right, let me go here and bring my exposure down. Okay. The first thing you're going to notice is, let me zoom here. Notice how that halo along the edge isn't as noticeable. All right, let me go over here. Let me zoom in here. Bring this down. Get rid, okay. Let me just make these two kind of sort of, oops. Make these two kind of sort of match, okay? Oh, come on. That's the other thing I hate about these sliders, is that they're a lot more touchy than the Classic. All right, you notice that these edges are a little bit more refined, okay? Compare this one, not so much. And this one, yeah, it could be argued, all right? If you notice that the outside edges maybe look a little bit better than here. Yeah. This one's a little bit crunchier looking, all right, a little harsher looking, all right, based on the camera raw, which minor, all right, looks a little better, still looks like crap. I won't use it like this, but it's gotten a little bit better, all right. So their selection process for masks, right, and even along this edge, along the edge of her face here, that is way more refined than the Lightroom one here. This is Lightroom, all right. You can see that there's kind of bit of a dark edge. I don't know if you can see it. There's a black edge there. Notice that black edge. Okay. This is in Lightroom. Okay. And this is in Adobe Camera Raw. Look how much cleaner that is. All right. But the important thing are these sliders here. All right. We have a feather, okay, which allows us to, in essence, soften the edge transition of our mask. Okay. Now, obviously, we have to be careful, because on hard edges, when you apply anything that's soft, we now start seeing a halo where we have, you know, this kind of like crispy, crunchy type of masking, where the edges are already soft. Adding softness to the mask just makes it match the softness of the image. All right. So now we have, you know, these crazy great edges on the soft parts of our image. Okay. but the trade-off is right here, okay? The other thing that we have is the edge. We can shift our edge. All right. So now we can take a look at it and say, okay, well, you know, on her face, can we shift it? All right. And we can probably shift it in a little bit. That looks a lot better. All right. But then at this point, I would then go ahead and subtract, use a brush, and keeping your auto mask, you know, just go ahead and let's add a lot of feather here. No, maybe not. Okay. Whoa, let's bring the slider that way. Okay. Let's see. Is this my erase? Yeah, this should be my eraser. Yeah, eraser. Okay. Oh, my flow's down. That's why. There you go. Come on, zoom out. All right. Don't want to zoom. There we go. Okay. Now, obviously, I'm kind of rushing this a little bit, but you can see how now you have the ability to really manipulate your masks. Let's go to brush. Well, let's go. Maybe bring the flow down. Maybe the density down. Okay. And just start cleaning up some of these edges. Okay. Now, I would tackle the hard edges a little bit differently. All right. But this feature is great for when you're doing anything with trees. Okay. All right. So keeping that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and cancel this for a second. All right. I'm going to come back to Lightroom. I'm going to open this one up. All right. This one here is just a tree line. No real hard edges. All right. So now if we edit that in and open it up as a smart object, you're going to see where this particular tool really shines. All right. So we double click, open it up in Adobe Camera Raw. Takes forever. See, this is, uh-oh. Sorry, an error occurred. Send report. Great. Okay. Edit in, open as smart object. Let's try that again. Honestly, I think I probably need to just clean my computer out a little bit. You know, Bill's got that nice brand spanking new machine, so his works really, really, really nice. All right, double click, open it up in Adobe Camera Raw. Hopefully I don't get that error message again. Oh, yes, I do. It's not liking something. It's not liking something.
Computer.
Okay. All right. Why? Oh, let's see. Let me try opening Photoshop in advance. All right. Well, it obviously loads the raw file properly, but okay. Here, let's try something. Go to Show and Explorer. Here we go. There's more than one way to skin a cat. All right, let's open this up. Where is it? It's 3430. All right, let's go to Photoshop. Drag this in. Okay, and because it dragged it in, it's going to automatically open it up in Adobe Camera Raw. All right, we go to the mask tool. We go to the sky. It does its thing. There's our sky. All right, and let's go and we'll bring the exposure down. All right, now again, I'm kind of doing a lot to this that you normally wouldn't do. You wouldn't do this to a sky, but I just want to show you what this mask tool does. Okay. All right, and then we have a feather and we have our edge. Now the edge by default is in the middle. All right, so you can move it outward or inward depending on which direction you go from center. This one goes from basically no feathering, although it does apply some feathering in areas based on what it encounters. Okay, so this is one of those things where the edge detection is not consistent all the way around. If it finds something soft, it's going to give you a soft edge. If it finds a hard edge, it's going to give you a hard edge. This feather tool could care less what kind of edge the mask built. It's going to take whatever is there and it's just going to soften it and feather it out from wherever it's at. And just so if it's something that's already soft and already feathered, it's just going to feather it even more. Okay. So just keep aware of that. All right. So we're going to take this and we're going to feather it out. And what we're going to do is we're just going to bring that in. Is it in? There we go. Bring that in a little bit. Okay. And obviously, we won't do anything like this crazy hard. All right. But you can see how that looks so much better. Okay. And I've said it before, the quality of your edit is only as good as the quality of your mask. All right. So in this case, I would go ahead, give myself a nice brush tool. All right. Give myself a 100% feather, lower the flow, maybe lower the density, get rid of my auto mask. I don't need the auto mask on. Okay. Give myself a nice sizable size and then just start building it in, especially in the shadow areas. All right. So what we're basically doing here, folks, is we're refining the edge of our mask in a way where we're also dodging and burning the underlying subject. Okay. So I'm paying close attention to the structure of what it is that I'm masking. All right. In order to kind of retain a little bit of that three-dimensional aspect of the form. Okay. So just like that, we have an edge that looks a lot more natural. All right. No crazy halos. All right. Now, again, this works great because this edge already has a lot of soft texture. Okay. Soft texture. All right. Any questions about this new tool? It's a long way to introduce this feature. Okay. All right. Now, what I want to do is I want to show you kind of, let me go back to Photoshop. I'm going to cancel this. All right, I'm going to cancel this. Okay, come back to this, and I'm just going to edit this normal. Edit in Adobe Photoshop. All right, in the normal manner. Okay. I'm going to show you a couple more tricks. All right. Now, obviously, I kind of handpicked some of these images that I'm working with in order to be able to demonstrate it to you guys what the effect of those masks are. Okay. You're going to come across an image that you're going to try to apply this, and it's going to just rattle your brain. It says, well, it worked for Duck. Why isn't it working for me? All right. You have to understand it. Whatever, you're masking is very dependent on what it is, the subject matter. Okay. In this case, we have a lot of small little areas. All right. So if I zoom in here, small little areas of light that are coming through in between all these branches and clusters of leaves. Okay. All right. I want you to keep that in mind for right now. All right. So I'm going to say, all right, I need to make a selection. All right. So if we go, all right, all the way up here on our menu, select, guess what we have? All right, we have sky selection. All right. So before it was available in Lightroom, it was available in Photoshop. Okay. And it's going to take a few minutes. It's going to analyze our image. Okay. And you're not going to see very much unless you kind of zoom in, and then you're going to see the marching ants. Okay. So what it's doing, it's using edge detection, a little bit of AI to figure out how to make that mask. All right. So let me just zoom in here. Okay. Everybody see the marching ants? Hopefully you can see the marching. There you go. All right. Now you can see the marching ants. Okay. When Lightroom does builds a mask, it's kind of using the same formula as Photoshop does. It looks for those edges, all right, and then creates a boundary, and then based on that boundary, it's going to paint black on one side and paint white on the other side, all right? And the transition from that boundary line is what gives it the mask its softness. All right. So if it goes straight from black to white, it's a very hard, harsh transition. It's going to create a very clean, crisp edge. But more often than not, that's going to look really, really bad and really crunchy. All right. So what we do is we want a nice kind of gradual transition. So it goes from black to dark gray to middle gray to light gray and then finally to white. It gives you that transition. The depth or the width of that transition is what gives you the softness. That's the feather. Okay, that's the feather. All right. So what we are not seeing in this Photoshop selection, and this goes whether you use the pen tool or whether you use the any of the selection tools that are available here. Okay. If you're using any of these, you're not going to see, all right, like here, the magic wand tool. All right. And I'm it's not even going to allow me to make a, there you go. Okay. you're not going to see that transition. All you see is Photoshop will do something and then does it behind the scenes, and then it adds the marching ants. Okay. What gives you your transition is actually right up here. All right. This anti-aliasing. Okay. All right. That's going to give you a little bit of a transition. Okay. So now, if I make, let's say, a levels adjustment or a curves adjustment rather, okay, it takes those marching ants and it utilizes that to create our mask. So if we use the alter option, we can see our mask. Okay. And you can see how crunchy that is. Okay. That's a very crunchy, very little transition. All right. You can see some gray, but that's not a very good mask. All right. So we go back out and we just darken this. Okay. You can see it probably does a better job than Lightroom, but it's not a very soft transition. Okay. And actually, I'm surprised it did as good a job as it did. All right. But you're going to notice here, let me bring this down even further. Okay. All these little spaces in between the branches that I mentioned earlier, they get missed. Even here on the periphery, all right, we're missing stuff. We're missing stuff here. We're missing stuff here, all right, simply because it identifies this as sky, all right, but even though we understand that this is sky, right, and here, it actually identifies as trees. So it's going to skip this. Depending on how big these openings are, if they're a little bit larger, it kind of recognizes that that's sky peeking through. And I'll show you what I mean in another example, but it has a hard time. All right. So now we have to figure out, oh, well, how do we fix this? Okay. Obviously, the sky replacement mask is not adequate. All right. It's not adequate. So let me get rid of that. All right. And fortunately, we do have other masks that are available. Okay. So we can do a select and we can do a, let me see, select color range. All right. So select color range. And this allows us to kind of like click and I'm going to bring this up. Okay. And we have here these little, let's see, these little eyedroppers. By default, the first one is selected. Okay. That's your initial selection. Okay. That's your initial selection. All right. So because it's sky, here, let me cancel this. Because it's sky, I'm going to pick something blue. All right. So we go select, color range. All right. And I'm going to pick something blue. All right. And then, of course, we have, a quick mask, which is, green. It's not easy to select the color from here. You got to kind of go elsewhere. I'm not going to bother with it. But from here, we want to add to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the next eyedropper. See, we're in the first one. That's the default. The next one has the little plus symbol, and the last one has the negative. Well, you guys know what that means. We're going to add or subtract. So in this case, we're going to add. I'm going to click on that add eyedropper. And then as I click, you can see that that green is disappearing more and more from our sky. Now, yes, this is a little bit of more work, okay? But it's going to give you a little bit better result, okay? Now, you can see the preview here. The preview is kind of giving you an idea of what's being selected, all right? So everything that's white is being selected. Everything that black is not, all right? So we just go in and we can click and we can click, all right? And that looks pretty darn good, all right? A little bit here. Because I have a green mask on blue, as it gets lighter and lighter, it kind of looks at that cyan and makes it a little bit harder to see. So I would pick probably a color like yellow, but like I said, it gets a little bit crazy trying to figure out how to change the color here. Okay. The other thing you're going to notice, all right, down below is that anything that is light in value is also being selected here, because the dome of this building is pretty much the same color as the clouds. So because I selected the clouds, it's also selecting this. But this is okay. It's minor. We can fix it. All right. Once I got it looking pretty good, I'm going to hit OK. And it's going to give me, once again, the marching ants. Okay, so if we zoom in here, we have our marching ants. Okay, but you're going to notice, well, maybe you guys notice, that the marching ants look a little bit more fuller. All right. And the marching ants are very much into these little nooks and crannies down inside the twigs and leaves of the tree, where before we didn't have that. Okay. All right. So now, let's see, Control 0. Go to our curves adjustment, makes a mask. All right. We bring that down. Okay. And you're going to notice that we do have a much better control of it. All right, let me bring this down. Okay, you can see how it's darkening those, but we have a bit of a halo. All right, and that halo, because it's light behind those edges of the leaves. Remember, the leaves aren't completely opaque. They're allowing some light transmission through it. There's also some light bloom that's going around it. And there's also, because of the fuzziness of the focus, you know, we have those soft edges. So now we get this, it's not darkening as much. All right. So there's a couple ways of fixing this. Okay. But you can see that it's much better than just doing the sky selection. All right. Okay. Alter option, click on the mask, brings you to the mask view. And of course, we have our black and white view. Black hides, white shows whatever you're applying, whatever effect you're applying, white will show the effect. So we had the levels adjustment or the curves adjustment, we darkened it. All right. Wherever it was white, it showed the darkening. Wherever it was black, did not. It hid all that darkening. Okay. But we can see that our selection isn't all that great. We have areas of light gray, okay, that we actually probably want white. All right. And then we have areas in here, okay, if we zoom in here, all right, you can actually see a little bit of the haloing, all right, and not quite a full black and white mask. Okay. So how can we fix this? Well, we can take a brush right? Let's go with a brush. We need white as our foreground color, right? So white as our foreground color. And we can zoom in a lot here, right? I'm being facetious here, so just so you know. Make a really, really tiny tiny brush, and then we can go ahead and we can start painting this in. And then in 50 years, when you're done with the mask, you can go ahead and apply your edit. Anybody want to attempt this? Anybody foolish or hardy enough to try this? There's got to be an easier way, right? Okay.
Nope.
Oh, yeah, you definitely don't want to try it. Okay. Well, we can use our brush, okay? Except I'm going to make it a little bit larger, all right? And we're going to, we're going to use this feature here. All right, actually, let me go here. All right. You would normally have your blend, your brush. This is your brush blend mode, all right, for your brush, okay? Not for the layer, not for the mask, for the brush, okay? It's typically on normal, all right? And when it's in normal, like you saw, all right, let me make this tiny, all right? We just go in and we can erase, right? And if we go on black, all right, we can erase the black, okay? I want you to keep that in mind, all right? What we actually want to do is we want to target not the white, not the black, but the gray tones, All right, so you guys are probably familiar. Here, let me go out here. All right, you guys are familiar with these blend modes here for our layer, right? Okay, and you know that the first set is our darken set. It takes whatever is in our adjustment and darkens the underlying layers, right? The second one is the lighten layer. It takes whatever's there and lightens, okay? And the darken obviously operates from solid black. The lighten operates from solid white. And then we have the next set, which is our overlay and soft light, which operates from middle gray, all right? And that's something we can use, all right? Let me go back into the mask. What's here and these little spaces? It's not black, it's not white, it's not quite middle gray, but it is gray. It's closer to middle gray than it is to black or white, okay? So now we can take and we can make our brush a little bit larger, all right? We'll come up here, we'll go from normal, and we'll go to overlay, okay? Overlay. Now, the other thing I like to do is I sometimes will bring my opacity down a little bit, probably like maybe about 50%, depending on the complexity of the detail, all right? The finer the detail, the more caution you need to use with this feature, all right, with this effect. And I'll show you what I mean, all right? So what we want to do is we want to take whatever is gray and we want to shift it in one of two directions, okay? What are the two directions? Well, it's a black and white mask. So we want to shift the gray either to the white side or to the black side, okay? So whatever side we want to shift to, that's what we're going to select as a foreground color for our brush, All right. So all these little openings in between the tree branches, I want to shift that to the white. All right. So I'm going to make white as my foreground color right here. Okay. White as my foreground color. And now because I have it in overlay mode, as I go in, it's going to take that gray and it's just going to start lightening it. All right. And because I have it at 50% opacity, it's not going to lighten it all that much until I lift my pen and bring it back down. All right. Or if you're using a mouse, every time you click, 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 it's going to get brighter and brighter. Now, like I said, I kind of like a little bit of that control. All right. Because if we do 100%, it's just going to do it all in one shot. Okay. All right. Now, I say all in one shot, but that's a little bit of misrepresentation because it's very, very dependent on how dark or light the gray values are that are in the mask. The lighter the gray, the faster it will shift over to white. Okay. The closer from middle gray, anything that's darker than middle gray, it doesn't shift as quickly. You might have to do a couple passes. All right. So now here you can see how I'm just kind of just opening up all these light areas. Okay. Everybody see how this is doing it with the blend mode here on the brush. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and let's zoom in over here where I haven't really done it. I'll show you what it looks like outside of the mask. All right. Just make sure you're on the mask mode, or otherwise you're going to be, you're not going to be able to paint anything. Be on the mask mode. All right. And as I paint, you can see that those areas are starting to get a little bit darker. All right. Why darker? All right. Because I'm painting white, which is allowing that dark, the darkening that we applied with the effect to really come into play here. Okay. Everybody see that? All right. And here you can probably see it when we go into these edges here. Okay. Nice. Nice, nice, nice. Okay. Now, this is where it can get a little bit complicated. Let's go back to our mask. All right. Because the edges are a little bit crunchy. Okay. Every time we remove that gray, oh, here you can see it in these areas. All right. Where was it? Oh, here we go. All right. See how it just kind of converts that all to white? Okay. Now, if I wanted to darken it, all I have to do is switch over to black as my foreground color. All right. Using the same blend mode, same overlay. All right. Now, as every time I make a pass, it's going to darken those. All right. So you can go either way. Okay. Now, if I switch back to white, all right, you're going to notice that anything that's gray is going to now start to lighten up. All right. But as soon as it becomes 100% black, no matter how much you go over it, it's not really going to affect it. Okay. It's going to affect the edges until it gets to the point where those very, very dark pixels are no longer dark pixels. and have been changed to white. Okay. So just be aware of that. All right. If you want to just remove it, we go to normal and we can just, and then bring it back to overlay. Okay. So remember that white to lighten and remove, black to darken and block. Okay. All right. Any questions so far? No questions? You guys doing good? Okay. All
I
right.
had a question, Doug.
Yeah.
When you clicked on the mask, how did you turn that to black and white?
Oh, sure. This is normal view. Okay. When you are working with the effect, in this case, it's a curves adjustment. All right, here, let me bring this up. This is my properties tab. Okay. If I do the property tab here, make changes, okay, you're going to see the effect. Okay. And you're going to notice there's a little white border around the icon for my curves. All right. When I select my mask, all right, it's going to put that border around a mask. Okay. And now my properties tab changes. All right. So whenever you want to do any kind of painting on your mask, you got to make sure that that white frame is around it. Okay. But in the normal view, this is what you're going to see. You can't really see the mask. All you can see is the effect of the mask, which most of the time, that's all we need. But when we need to really, really control the mask, right, what we can do is if you press and hold the Alt key on a Windows or the Options key on a Mac, hold the Alt or Option, and then click on your mask, what it does is it loads that mask into the main window. All right. And now what you are seeing is the full version of your mask. All right. And this then allows you to go ahead and work the minutia out of your mask. Okay. All right. Like, for example, here at building, I want to, darken that up. So I'm just going to go ahead and paint black over this. All right. Because I want to really, all right. There we go. And maybe some of these little ones down below. Okay. Switch to white as my foreground color and then just clean up the edges around there. Okay. And then when you're done with your mask, you can either alt click on the mask, or what I normally do is I'll just click on the effect on my effect, the layer effect, and it switches it over. Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. Okay. So now, all right, we kind of, we did a lot of work on that mask. Let me zoom in here. All right. And we say, okay, well, it's looking a little bit crunchy. Okay. What we have available here on the properties tab is we do have the ability to add a feather. Okay. Now, the nice thing about this feather works very similar to the new feather slider in the camera raw filter. Okay. This is non-destructive. All right. But it's a global feather. So it's going to apply it on all of the mask. Okay. And it's independent of any other feathering you do. All right. So we can, there are several different locations where you can apply feathering. All right. And this is nice because it can really apply feather on a global level that allows you to even manipulate it from this view here. Okay, actually let me go back to, okay. So here's our adjustment layer. Okay. What we need to do is we need to activate our mask. All right. See the change in the frame, which now we have this, and we can play with the feather, and we can see the effect. You know, obviously if we put too much, we put a lot of haloing to it. All right. But obviously if we do, here, let me zoom out a bit here. Control minus. Okay. That haloing is very noticeable. If I do this kind of haloing, it's not as noticeable unless you do a really like extreme modification. All right. And then the halo starts kind of popping in. But again, very, very seldom will you be doing something this extreme. Now, we're dealing with landscape photos where we're manipulating luminosity. So changes aren't going to be extreme. Where you will get into something extreme is if you apply like a color change. If you turn somebody's pants from green to blue, all right, that is a very extreme change. All right. And then you would definitely notice your edges, and you're going to need a little bit more control on your edges. But for like this natural looking stuff around vegetations, for your landscape stuff, even some of like, even with people, all right, around hair, it's not as noticeable. Fur on animals, not as noticeable. Depending on the bird, you know, you might get away with a certain amount of feathering around birds. Okay. But what that does is it really, really just allows you, really allows you to play with the that edge control. Okay, so we can apply just probably like 1 point. Okay, I'm gonna apply one pixel of feather. Okay, and let me open this up. Let me zoom in really, really far. Okay, this is no feather. All right, see how crunchy that is? All right, and oops. Come on, why isn't it letting me? Oh, what happened here? All right, my system, it jumped too far. All right, I must have done, let me just type in 1, hit enter. Oh, come on, 1. Enter, there we go. All right, that's one pixel. Okay, and we can do half pixel. All right, it will do the math for a half pixel. Okay, it's still a little bit of crunchy. You can see, you know, a little bit of that stair stepping, but you know, with the fine detail, if you type in a 1, it's going to soften up that edge just enough. Okay, so you have the ability to really, really, really get down into the weeds here and fine tune your mask. All right, now this is a global mask. Okay, if we didn't want to do it like that, another way we can do it is we just take right here on our toolbar, we use the very seldom used blur tool. Okay, and we can, you know, go to strength, you know, 100%. Oh, that's a little bit too much. maybe let's do 10%. Okay. And then we just add a little bit of blur. Okay. And there we go. We have our edge control. Obviously, you know, this is a little bit more hands-on. Okay. But when you need that kind of control, again, you know, if you have a hard edge, you might want a hard transition. Okay. You don't want that much of a feather. If you have a soft edge, then, you know, we just bring this up to 100% and we just make that transition a little bit softer. Okay. Depending on what it is that you want to do. All right. Okay. Everybody still with me? Let's do one more. Let's go back to where's Lightroom. I'm going to do this one. All right. We have a crappy sky behind this ladder here. I want to replace it with, oh, we're like almost out of time here. I want to replace it with this sky. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the two. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and say edit in, not in normal. I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom, open as layers in Photoshop. Okay. Actually, I can probably close this one out. We don't need this one. Okay. Give it a second. It's thinking. It's loading up. There we go. 1 and 2. I'm going to go ahead. Oh, you know what? They're both different sizes. So it's probably going to give me, oh, maybe not. All right. Let me close this one. I don't want to save it. Okay. Yes, 2 different sizes. Okay. So we have our sky and we have our hook and ladder. Okay. And I want to get rid of this sky and I want to drop in this one. All right. So the first thing I want to do is let's go ahead and make that larger. All right. And we're just going to do that. Okay. And I'm going to drop that behind. All right. Now, because I'm doing a full sky replacement, all right, unfortunately, one of the things so that we don't have on this taskbar is sky replacement. We have remove background. We can try remove background, see if that'll remove the sky. All right. But it's going to use the AI. It's going to say, well, that's your background right there. Okay. But where's the rest of it? Okay. So that's not good. All right. So let's get rid of that mask. We'll delete it. Okay. But again, we can go over here to select, drop down about halfway to where it says sky, and give it a second. It's going to churn away. And then it's going to give us our marching ants. Okay. And what I want to do is I just want to remove it. So on my image layer, I'm just going to apply a mask. All right. So I'm going to come down here to my little mask symbol. I'm going to click on it. And oh, what happened? Well, we selected the sky. Okay. So the selection keeps the sky. So because we said we're selecting the sky, it's going to keep the sky. So when we made our mask, the mask defaulted to keeping the sky, getting rid of everything else. So all we do is we just go make sure we have our mask selected. All right. And I usually use the shortcut keys, but if you have this open, all right, we do have the invert button right here. You can click on the invert or Control Command I, which is normally what I do, and it inverts it. And we already see a big problem, don't we? We see a big problem. All right. It got rid of the white stripes. All right. Now remember, anything that is backlit tends to have, let me just turn off that mask for a second. All right. Tends to have what's called light blooming around the edges. That's where light kind of creeps in around the edges and you don't get that crisp silhouette. All right. So if we zoom in really, really far here, okay, actually you can see that this edge, oops, what happened? Oh, hold on. What the heck did I do? Oh, I inadvertently made it transparent. Okay, here we go. Let's try that again. Okay. Right along that edge, okay, it makes it disappear because the value, the color value of the metal, well, actually the metal's reflecting the sky, so it's thinking that that's sky. So it's you know, removing the sky there, okay? And where the stripes are, let's see, where are our stripes? Okay. It can see part of the shadow of the ladder behind it. So it's probably, the AI is probably thinking, well, that's supposed to be sky there because it's the same value of our sky here. All right. This value and this value and this value and this value, they're all the same. So it's recognizing it all sky. All right. And this is where we have to come in and fix things. All right. So now again, we can go here and we can say, okay, we have that trick that's available to us where we can take our brush, right? Make sure that we are in the overlay mode. Okay. White as our foreground color. And then if we paint, anything that is not black is going to start turning it to white. Okay. Now here's the problem. All right. Some of that sky, you notice, it didn't mask it as completely black. So this particular technique has its drawbacks. All right. So let's undo all that. And we're going to take one step first. Okay. Hopefully you guys can see it. There's can you see kind of like right in here? It's a little bit of a haze. Oh, actually,
Yeah, I see it.
yeah, actually you can, you can, here, hold on. Let's erase that. Come on. You can actually see the demarcation line between solid black and a dark gray. All right, there's a demarcation line. And then of course, this one here is getting, you know, it's a little lighter. Okay. All right. So what we need to do is we need to first ensure that we can prep our mask to be able to accept the fact that when we use our brush with that overlay, that we are not inadvertently working against ourselves. Okay. So you might say, well, you know, what we can do is we can take black as our foreground color and we can just go here. But now, you know, anything inside there that we actually want white is now being turned to black. So that's not going to help us too much. Okay. Fortunately, there is another little trick that we can apply. Okay. within the mask, we have options for, let's see, where is it? Edit, no, image, adjustments, okay? Because the mask is technically a bitmap image. We can go to our adjustments, and for this, I usually like curves. All right, I mean levels. Usually, I prefer curves everywhere else. Levels, I like it here. So we're going to go to levels, okay? And it allows me to take my blacks and make my blacks darker just by moving the black point. All right, I'm moving my black point, which is right here. I'm moving the black point inward. All right, so this is 0. All right, so so this is 100, meaning pure white, and this is 0, pure black. Okay, and then right next to it, you know, we have 10, and we have 20, and we have 30, and so on. All right, so what we're doing is we're telling that this point here, where it's a 0 black, I want to transpose it to here. All right, and this will now be my new 0 point black. So anything that was in this gray value that way is going to get shifted to black. Does that make sense? Okay, and we can do the same thing with our white point. Okay, you can see how anything that's what we thought was white wasn't quite white. It was very, very light. All right, and you can actually see it in the right here in the histogram. All right, same thing here. Okay, notice how this kind of just flattens out right there. That's where I put my black point. And the same thing with our white point. I kind of bring my white point there. And now I can take that middle point, which is our gray, all right, and I can say, okay, which way do I want to shift it? All right, do I want to make my grays darker, or do I want to make my grays lighter? All right, in this case, I think I want to make them lighter. All right. And obviously, we're going to need to do some cleanup with a regular brush. Okay, but now we have very crisp edges. All right. Whereas, let's see, before, can I do this? Is it going to let me? Why isn't it letting me hit the preview button? Not letting me hit the preview button. Okay. Oh, it's not letting me hit any button. Come on. I hung up. It's hung up. Damn it. I broke it again. Okay. But you can see how we shifted the tonalities, right? So now when my computer catches up with me and decides to behave, I can then use my brush tool to clean it up. Okay. Come on, come on, come on. Let's toggle. There we go. There we go. Okay. So now we can go to my brush tool. Let me bring this down. White as my foreground color. Make sure you're still in overlay. All right. And I can clean those up. I can clean these up. Okay. Where I need solid. All right. Again, you're going to need to remember, we're going to go up here. We're going to go to normal. All right. I might use a hard round brush for this. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. Get rid of these. And then we clean up our mask appropriately. All right. So this is big areas. Big areas, they're easy. They're easy to understand. They're easy to work on. All right. You guys should have absolutely no problem with this. Okay. But let's take a look at the ladder here. All right. because this is where we're going to run into problems. Okay. If I zoom in here, all right, you can see that the mask, all right, because the mask operates on levels of black and white, including grays. See all those gray tones in there? All right. Let's change this to our overlay. Oops, not soft light, overlay. Okay. And we're going to just clean that up here, over here, and over here, and over here. Okay. But where these rungs are, where the rungs are, okay, I'm going to choose black as my foreground color. All right. Soft round brush. I prefer soft round brush. And I'm also going to bring my opacity down just a little bit. Okay. And then now, as I go over it, it just cleans those up. Okay. And it's the same as all those other previous techniques. All right. All right. We went way over. All right. So I'm not going to bore you anymore. Hopefully you picked up some useful tools. All right. And then you just go in and you finagle it and you're good to go. All right, guys. Any last minute questions? The two of you that are left behind? Okay. All right. I know we got heavy duty, but hopefully you picked something up. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Stay safe. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Doc, thanks.
All right. Be good.
Thank you for watching Learning Photography with Duck. Brought to you in association with Milford Photo, your local full-service camera store. Located in downtown Milford, Connecticut, Milford Photo offers you a personalized shopping experience. From the latest camera gear to printing and framing services. And, of course, educational workshops to teach you the finer aspects of photography. Don't forget to tell them Duck sent you.